importance. Yesterday was congratulations. Very good win. How important was that win?
Yeah, it was important. I just think the players stood up and said to the world that this crap about Benji is just crap. I mean, you don't play like that with all the players we had out yesterday without having a real commitment to the coach. And the article was written early in the week, which, and I understand journalism and, you know, clickbait and, you know, all the rest of it, but agenda-driven journalism is not true. It's just not true. And the lies that were written in the article was very difficult for Benji to take. He's got a thick skin, but he just felt, and the players particularly just felt, they knew it wasn't true. Adam Dewey knew it wasn't true. You know, I've never even met Paul McGregor, so how I was going to get him as a coach, I don't know. But at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is that it was a statement by the players about what they feel about Benji.
Well, he looked emotional and he wasn't happy about that article. And he's had a tough time, Benj. Like, I spoke to him earlier in the year, he was comfortable, everything was going really well, and I love Benji. I think he's got great potential as a coach. How do you think he's handled it so far?
Look, I think, let's look at it this way, guys. I mean, you guys, everybody in the press were bagging up West Tigers for the last 3 or 4 years and how terrible they were and they weren't getting any better and all the rest of it. He's taken on a job that not many people would have ever taken on. He's taken it on without coaching before in the history of the game. He took it on because in a lot of ways they gave him the blazer because he was the one that kept trying to give them some face in that marketplace, let's be honest about it. And then all of a sudden the Tim Sheens thing happened and he inherited the side. He inherited a tough roster, which I believe there's only 22 of the 36 players who could play NRL. So he had no depth to work with. We ran last in reserve grade. He's taken on that challenge and worked forward. This year, we've gone in with the changes we could make, and he's got better and better. He will be the first to say he was starstruck, not starstruck, stunned when he went in there. But, mate, he learns every day. You see, you can't learn if you don't want to learn. You can't learn if you're not intelligent. He's intelligent, and he's there for one reason and one reason only. I can assure you with Benji, it's not about the money. It's about the actual want to make West Tigers successful again. So he's taken on an unenviable task, and I think he's done a great job.
Richard, there was a bit of optimism with the young kids coming through. The Lockie Galvin situation, how did that unfold? You were right in the middle of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting that both those, they're very different, him and the young hooker. I mean, Lockie just didn't want to be there. I mean, he told us up front he didn't want to be there. He didn't want to be involved with Benji as the coach. He wanted to move on to otherwise, which is great. He made that decision. Then we had to make a decision after that.
Did that hurt though, Richard?
Well, it hurt Benji, but it hurt me too because I never want to lose a junior. And when I got there, I mean, I watched the tapes before I went there and I could see what a player he was and we could build a club around him, and we did. We named him straight away in the first grade side of 5'8". No one had ever heard of him. Look, and he's going to be a great kid, but you know, he's got a way of looking at things which for his betterment, and I hope he's successful. I think he will be successful. He's a good player. But you know, so we had to make a call about what was best for the club and what was best for the squad. I mean, the old days of the Bulldogs, when you would have been there, mate, somebody said that, you would have been around them, towering, feathering. But we didn't do that, and so we had to move on. The other one was different, though. The other one was a young kid who made it clear to us that he wanted to be there, and to his parents. I went and saw his parents 2 weeks before this happened, and said, look. And they asked, if Appy signs, we want him to be able to move on. Now, that would have meant him moving on the following year. We could have held him, but we wouldn't have, because from a cap point of view, it would have been better. And so we actually approached Newcastle and said, look, not about him at all. Say, well, we'd like to get KPP now. We've got enough money in the cap. We've got a fair bit of money in the cap. And the bottom line was, and they said, yep. But then they came back and said, no, we want to do a player swap. Can the kid come for just this year, rest of the year? And I said, yeah, no problems at all, we'll do that. And I talked to the kid and he was quite keen to go. Bottom line was, then they came back and said, no, we want to sign him longer term. So then I had to put a situation to him. Do I put him on the market now? Or do I, because I still thought he could go to Newcastle or I get KPP. But as it turned out, his manager asked me, and I told his parents that if we decided to sign, so in that period, we made the final decision to sign Appy Coruscant. Which, you know, it's a similar decision, I think I spoke to you about what South had to go through. They chose a way, whether it was right or wrong about Adam, and it's the same with Appy. But we've chosen that his loyalty, his leadership, we don't have a lot of senior leadership in our club. That's why we bought Luai. And we felt that going forward, that Appy's done the right thing by the club, and more importantly, he's still an outstanding player. And Fijians, you know, people say he's this and he's that age, but Fijians seem to play forever. So we'll see how we go. Sorry, mate.
What about the rumours over the weekend that Appy hasn't signed?
No, he hasn't signed, but we're
You're very close.
Yeah, we sort of accelerated the process when we decided that we were going to let. Because we hadn't made that final decision, but when we made that final, we accelerated about 2 weeks ago, and we're well down the track with his manager and Appy, and you know, Appy will be with us.
Do you think you can keep Appy and Jerome there. It's pretty important to keep those two guys now, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Jerome's got his clauses, right?
Yeah, he's got a clause next year.
What's the situation with all that?
Yeah, he's got a clause next year that if he chooses, he can pull out the following year. But he's shown no signs to me not to be absolutely. I mean, he was there yesterday. He was there. You know, he's showed no sign to me about not being the leader we've always thought he would be. You know, he's been outstanding for us. If we only have him for 2 years out, but I think he'll be here for the long term. I've got no doubt.
Would you try and get those clauses taken out?
Yeah, well, I probably could. I mean, I get on well with his manager. His manager's Latrell's manager, as you know, and manager. But you see, one of the things you've got to remember, mate, you know, building a club, and this is what I say. Well, our club was reviewed as being no one would want to go there. We were rubbish and everything else. What you've got to do is build a club where people want to be there. Yeah. Now, Lockie didn't want to be there. That's fine. If Jerome didn't want to be there because we weren't creating the club that we wanted, then that's what it does. But I think we're creating a club internally and as a club generally that players will want to be at. And I think that the challenge of him leading us through to a final series is something that Jerome Luai, as he said, it's all about the rings, Richard.
And he's got plenty of them.
So, yes, and mate, he's a great, you don't understand what a great leader, and we've lacked that.
Talk us through that a bit. So what's he like, Jerome, around the group? We know what he's like on the field. He's a winner. He's a competitor. What does he bring off the field to the boys, to the camp?
Well, Tito brings never shutting up and playing really bad, loud music in the dressing room. But Jerome's a leader. He thinks things through. He's really caring. You know, he gives us his opinion. He doesn't just go along with the coach. If he's got a thought, he gives it. He brings leadership. Great training ethos. Fantastic attitude. Look, we couldn't ask for a better person to have got to the club and to pay the money we paid for him was a nick. And I shouldn't say that, he probably want more when he goes forward. But no, I'm being funny. But it's a nick because he's a great leader. And that's why Appy's a great leader. Outside of that, we've got a lot of young leaders. Really good young leaders, but they're still only young. Sam Fainu is going to be a great leader in the club. You know, May is going to be a great leader in the club, but he's just arrived. So we really need that experience of people like him and Appy who've won. Because we haven't won for a long while.
Just back on the Galvin quickly, I won't be a sec, but I remember, because we were on the show, we obviously spoke about it a lot, and at one point you said that you weren't going to let him go, and then you let him go. What changed there?
Well, I honestly thought, when I sat down with his manager and I was about to offer him the contract and the manager said he doesn't want to be here, it was a bit of a shock for me. I've never had 32 years, I've never had anybody say they don't even want to look at a deal. And I'm not bagging the management or him for it, that's what he said. And so from then it was a shock. So I walk away from that saying, well, he's not going anywhere and I don't want... But as the weeks went on and it rolled over and over and there was no sign, and don't worry, we asked, there was no sign of him reneging on that, then it became obvious that a decision had been made for the betterment of the club in the long term and the playing group more particularly in the short term. And so we made that decision.
Because you had the legal stuff going on too.
Yeah,
right?
we did. We won't get into legal stuff because I'll get it. But you're right, it was going, but that had no real effect on the decision. Honestly, it didn't. It had no real effect at all. And the board was united behind what we wanted to do. But it wasn't anything to do with the legal stuff. It was more to do with what are we trying to build here as a team and is he going to be part of it?
What are some of the biggest challenges? Because you've been successful at a lot of the clubs that you've gone to. Is there success around the corner for the Tigers?
Yeah, there is. See, people, there are all these experts about building a club. They want West Tigers to be successful. They sort of do, but they don't. But at the end of the day, you've got to worry about your own self and what you're building. The first thing you've got to do is you've got to put a proper corporate governance in place. We never had that. We have got it now. We've got 4 independent directors there. The shareholding situation is working out what happens to the shareholders' agreements going forward. But we've actually put in place an independent board. So that's important. Then you've got to pass it on with governance to the CEO. Now, I wouldn't have signed the contract I did if I didn't have complete control as the CEO and true governance. And there's not been one decision that I've made that they haven't been supported. Then the third thing you've got to do is go in and see who the people you've got in the club and who do you put in there to make the club better around the place. And we made changes straight away, but we made very little changes since. And 3 years ago, we had a 36% staff turnover. Last year, we had a 27%. This year, we've got a 13%. So we've stabilised the club there. We've stabilised the club financially. So, and you've got to have, whether you like it or not, you've got to have the... So we lost $5 million over 2 years. This year we'll make a profit. We owe no money to anybody. Holman Barnes, anybody else owes no money. And we'll have $1 million in the bank at the end of the year. So we're cash flow friendly now. Those things can't happen if you haven't rearranged the club. Then you get onto your roster, and your roster you've got to work at, is the coach good enough? And I never knew Benji before I got here. And I've seen interesting text between Benji and I when I first started, by the way. But at the end of the day, I grew to realise, and probably through the prompting of Wayne, to be totally honest, just how smart he was and how good he could be. And mate, he's done nothing but want to learn. He's made mistakes, he's made errors, but he's owned up to them. And mate, cleaning out players from a roster is the most difficult job in the world because no one's happy. The managers aren't happy, the players aren't happy. But you know what you've got to do. And, Gould's going through it at what's that? You've got to make these tough calls that are not always popular. He's now thought that Galvin's going to make a better spot for him. That's a decision he makes. Yeah. What I'm saying to you, though, is they're not easy decisions and they eat away at you if you don't stick together. If you start saying, like they were going on, like, Richo wants this kid and he wants... Well, it's never been the same. We've made decisions all together. We've got the roster into a really good space at the moment. Our fans can go to a game now and think they can win.